compared to everything else going on that the government's involved in, that little area is so small and insignificant that it completely takes your statement and throws it in the trash. Then again, Miss Eleanor Norton, because I say this every show, folks, she needs to go back and retake her 8th grade civics class, because we don't live in a separation of powers government. We live in a representative republic. And if you don't believe me, folks, go ahead and do your research and try to prove me wrong. If you try to say we live in a democracy, you know who the first person who claimed we live in a democracy was? Woodrow Wilson. Our founders really, really did not like the term Democrat or democratic as far as our system of government, and they refuted that statement tooth and nail. Even those who wanted one that was more democratic than what we ended up with, they still would not call our form of our government a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. That's every person has a vote and has a say in every bill and every law. And what it turns into is 2 lions, a sheep, and a rabbit voting on who's for dinner. Yeah. Somebody's going to lose. And it ain't who you hope it's going to be. But in any way, shape, or form, we have some news coming out of our beloved government. Things that went on. For those of you who haven't been following it, a journalist, one of a few Americans that was taken hostage by ISIL or ISIS or ISI or whatever term the political arm of Al-Qaeda is using these days, because that's who they are, folks. But they took some Americans hostage, and they recently released a video of them beheading an American journalist. And that story's been kind of circulating all over for the past couple of days. Now that, of course, folks, is the kind of the part of the bad part of the story. That's the background. And we're, of course, talking about James Foley, who was beheaded. Well, we've got more information about anything, if anything has been done about it. Well, first of all, they were attempting to use the hostages to leverage ransom. They wanted money to fund further activities. So that's kind of part of why they were taken hostage. It wasn't just to to behead them to make that kind of a statement, but they wanted to try to extort money. And it didn't work, because we do not negotiate with terrorists. We probably have been a little bit easier on them in this administration than we have in previous ones. Okay, I'll just say it. It's not probably. We have been. Come on, we sent 5 murderous terrorists back home to continue their work in exchange for 1 deserter. More on him later. But the Department of Defense has released a couple of press releases, statements regarding what actions have been taken in the past. Earlier this summer, they did attempt a clandestine rescue operation done by our counter-terrorism forces, unnamed force. In any, as far as these press releases go, I can draw my own conclusions which one it was. We have a couple of them, folks, that are experts in this, and a lot of people are going to pop up and say SEAL Team 6 because they got bin Laden. They're not the only one. They're just the one that is currently tagged to be in the spotlight, so that the other ones can continue to do their work in the shadows and actually accomplish their missions. Not saying that SEAL Team 6 doesn't, but it requires a certain level of secrecy, and if one of them has a spotlight on them, it draws the attention away from the others, so it's still part of the whole way things are done, so to speak. But in any way, shape, or form, one of the counterterrorism units, special operational units, went to try to rescue these hostages earlier this summer. And the exact date, of course, is not being given. Neither are any mission details, which will not be released. But good old John Kirby, Rear Admiral Kirby, who's the Pentagon press secretary, released the following words regarding what was attempted. And Kirby states, "The United States attempted a rescue operation recently to free a number of American hostages held in Syria by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. This operation involved air and ground components and was focused on a particular captor network within ISIL. Unfortunately, the mission was not successful because the hostages were not present at the targeted location. As we have said repeatedly, the United States government is committed to the safety and well-being of its citizens, particularly those suffering in captivity. In this case, we put the best of the United States military in harm's way to try to bring our citizens home. The United States government uses its full breadth of our military intelligence and diplomatic capabilities to bring people home whenever we can. The United States will not tolerate the abduction of our people and will work tirelessly to secure the safety of our citizens and to hold their captives accountable." So that's Admiral Kirby's statement coming from the Pentagon. And we also have an issue of a statement coming from the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. She's a special assistant to the President for that group, Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. We're talking about Lisa Monaco, and her statement on the attempted rescue operation is, "As the Department of Defense has now announced, earlier this summer the President authorized an operation to attempt the rescue of American citizens who were kidnapped and held by ISIL against their will in Syria. The President authorized action at this time because it was the National Security Team's assessment that these hostages were in direct danger with each passing day in ISIL custody. The U.S. government had what we believed was sufficient intelligence, and when the opportunity presented itself, the President authorized the Department of Defense to move aggressively to recover our citizens. Unfortunately, that mission was ultimately not successful because the hostages were not present. Given the need to protect our military's operational capabilities, we will not be able to reveal the details of this operation, but the President could not be prouder of the U.S. forces who carried out this mission and the dedicated intelligence and diplomatic professionals who supported their efforts. Their efforts should serve as another signal to those who would do us harm that the United States will not tolerate the abduction of our people and will spare no efforts to secure the safety of our citizens and to hold their captors accountable. Our thoughts and prayers are with the remaining hostages' families and their loved ones during this difficult time. We continue to call for their immediate release. On behalf of all Americans, we keep these individuals and their families in our thoughts and prayers." So there you have it, folks. There's a couple of segments heard from. Now, this is not the first time that we've had to go and send these special units in to rescue Americans. And it's not the first time rescue attempts have failed. It's happened countless times, and you can't really point a finger for the mission failures most of the time, because when they do happen, we have credible intelligence. We go, but the world changes, folks. When we have intelligence that somebody is at this location, and we get the go order, or the units get the go order, and they go to do the mission, by the time they actually hit the ground, the situation a lot of times has changed. They do try to keep good eyes on and see what has gone down. But when you have somebody who uses tunnels and other networks to play the shell game and move people around, by the time you get there, a lot of times you may have just missed them, but missed the target, missed rescuing the hostages by just such a bare, just enough of a margin that they've gone so the trail is a little bit cooler than you like. So there's no way to legitimately do a follow-on because you just don't know enough. So you have to go back and regather more information and press forward. But there's always something on site that gives you more intelligence and information to lead towards that follow-on target. You just have to do some good preparation, folks. So don't be disheartened that it hasn't happened yet. Don't blame those forces for the fact that they were unable to stop and rescue the hostages before this beheading. It's just bad luck. Now, we can talk about the operation into Iran when they attempted to rescue the hostages when Delta Force went in and how that got botched. And we can point some legitimate fingers at President Jimmy Carter because he cut the budget so much to our Defense Department that even our special operators could not afford proper maintenance on their helicopters, so they didn't make it. And I know several people that were involved in that particular operation, and you mention Carter's name, and what comes out of them is unintelligible and very angry growls and grunts, and usually a stomping away, and sometimes, fists going pounding into a tree or into a heavy bag. But it kind of some sore spots in there. Now, is this particular rescue attempt Obama's similar failure, so to speak? Well, the defense budget has not been cut that much. I would venture to guess that the intelligence budget has not been cut that severely yet. Was this an intelligence failure? I would say that either. I would just say that the situation changed very rapidly and too rapidly for the intelligence to be able to keep up with it. Now, none of us were sitting in the room when Obama made his decision to allow them to go, so we can just guess. So the question does remain, or does sit there, did the president sit on the information too long before giving the go order? Or did he say, okay, you got it, go? We don't know. So we don't know if we can blame him or not. It'd be really nice to, though, wouldn't it, folks? But the plain old facts are we don't know. So we can't point a finger at anybody at this time. All we can do is hope that we're able to get our intelligence hooks into the bad guys, find out where they are, what they're doing, and rescue the rest of our Americans before they fall to the same fate as that journalist, Mr. James Foley. So, let's pray for our Americans currently in captivity. While we're praying for Americans currently in captivity, of course, let's pray for our U.S. Marine who's currently locked up in a Mexican jail because he made a wrong turn. And the fact that it appears that our State Department really isn't doing much to help him out. And let's see if we can energize Washington to get and do that. But it's kind of difficult. You've got, if your congressmen, if your senators and representatives are doing what they're supposed to be doing during recess, you can get in their face and I wouldn't be overly confrontational, but you can bring the subject up and pressure them a little bit, especially since the representatives are running for re-election. So you can go ahead and go to your congressional district and when they have their town hall meetings and bring the subject up. Let's get our Marine back from Mexico. Now some of the Senate is also running for re-election, or they're full on open seats and you have candidates. So go ahead and bring it up to those particular candidates. But just to remind you, they are running re-election campaigns or election campaigns. So the people that really leverage are the members of the Senate who are not up for re-election. They're supposed to be out and doing town halls and talking to you. And they don't have a re-election campaign on the line. So they should be out doing the town halls. That's their job right now. So if they're doing their job, talk to them. Go to one of their town halls. If they're not, start emailing and calling their office and bring it up. And so let's see if we can't get our Marine home. Get those individuals into the discussion with there in Washington. Of course, it's all going to fall on deaf ears anyway because, Congress goes on recess. So what does the president do? He flies out to Martha's Vineyard and goes on an extended vacation. Oh, he came back for 2 days He flapped his gums about the stuff going on in Ferguson, Missouri, and then he went back to Martha's Vineyard. Meanwhile, his pet stooge, his number one thug, his number one lawfare chief of staff, so to speak, we're talking about Attorney General Eric Holder, is of course on the ground there, and or was, and lending his expertise to the investigation into the Michael Brown shooting incident. The irony about this whole incident, folks, is the more information and evidence that comes up, the less and less innocent Michael Brown looks, and the more not guilty the police officer is looking. Because some of the latest stuff coming out is a lot of corroborating reports stating that the officer was beaten badly, may have had the orbital socket, part of his skull around his eye, may have been fractured, and all kinds of other things. And the thing about all these reports coming out is, first of all, I haven't seen any that violated any HIPAA laws. So that's one of the things that's kind of in the way there, is exactly what his medical condition was and everything. That's protected information. That's personal information that I don't think the general public really has a right to know. You know, this is this guy's medical information. I wouldn't want mine out there for the public to look at. But then again, if I was being accused of something and that medical information would demonstrate that I did the right thing or did not do the wrong thing, as the case may be, I might be a little bit willing to allow that information to be leaked out. But there have been multiple sources that had direct access to that information who have come out and corroborated that the officer was severely beaten and was probably beaten to the point, and it looks as though he was beaten to the point where he was barely conscious when he had to defend himself with deadly force. And that very well may be the case, and it's looking more and more like it could be the case. So let's stay tuned and see what comes out there. It's not just rumors that some people are claiming and false statements that some news agencies have put out. These are actual facts, and what I've seen is not just the initial one person says this. I've seen corroboration. So we'll see what comes about that. Meanwhile, they're talking about the grand jury actually convening and starting to look at the evidence, as it were. Now, speaking of grand juries, Rick Perry, like I brought up yesterday, he faced his indictment, and he went and surrendered to the Travis County Sheriff's Office and turned the whole thing into a good press event. And he was there for a couple of hours, or if even. Made his statements, shook some hands, did some grip and grins, and made a statement to the press. And then he hopped a flight to New Hampshire to go talk economic policies. So it hasn't really inhibited his job. But the surprising thing is, right now in the polls, it's appearing that Rick Perry is now the front runner for the GOP candidate for 2016 currently. And it's all because of what Rosemary Lehman has done with her little lawfare. Now, this isn't the first time Rosemary's pulled this stunt, nor is it the first time the Democrats in general have pulled this stunt, where they're losing in the ballots, and they're in the ballot box, and they're losing through legislative channels. Or they turn around and attempt to, and they know that they would lose a direct kind of battle in the courts on the issue, such as the issues with the abortion clinics, and that the new restrictions on them here in Texas, that they've lost those those court cases, the Second Amendment infringements that have been brought before the Supreme Court have all been